The moment you stop explaining, they start respecting. Feel this divine truth resonate deep within your soul, for it holds a key to unlocking a power you may have forgotten you possess. Have you ever felt your own energy, your very essence, drain away the more you tried to make others understand? The more you pleaded for your perspective to be seen, the more you felt yourself dissolving into the noise of their judgment and misunderstanding. You are not alone in this sacred struggle. This is a sign, a profound whisper from your higher self, calling you to awaken to a new frequency of being. If this message has found you at this pivotal moment, let your soul affirm its presence in the comments below. With a simple, powerful, "I am listening," your vibration will be felt, and your story will serve as a beacon for every other soul navigating this very path. Remember to like this message if it touches you and subscribe to continue this journey of profound self-discovery with us. Your alignment with this truth helps the universe guide it to others who are ready to receive it. Respect, the kind that anchors your presence in the world, does not begin with a torrent of words. It does not arise from meticulously crafted arguments or heartfelt pleas. No, the respect your soul yearns for, the respect that honors your divine blueprint, begins the very instant you go quiet. It is born in the sacred pause. We are not speaking of the awkward, empty silence that begs to be filled, the kind that makes the ego squirm with discomfort. We are talking about a different quality of silence altogether. It is a deliberate silence, a strategic stillness. It is the kind of silence that is a palpable force, a tangible energy that enters a room before your physical form even crosses the threshold. It is a vibration of absolute self-possession. This silence is your spiritual armor, your invisible fortress. It is a statement to the universe and to everyone in your presence that you are anchored in a truth so deep it requires no external validation. This profound stillness becomes a mirror. When you cease the endless flow of explanation, you are no longer giving people a narrative to attack, a concept to debate, or a vulnerability to exploit. Instead, you create a space, a sacred vacuum. And into that space, they cannot help but project their own inner world, their insecurities, their assumptions, their judgments, their own need for control. It all comes rushing to the surface, reflected back at them by the unshakable calm of your presence. They begin to think, truly think, not just react. They are forced to calculate their next move, to weigh their words, because they can no longer predict you. They are not responding out of fear of your anger, but out of a sudden, startling awareness of your power. A power you claimed not by raising your voice, but by silencing it. This is a timeless principle of power, a universal law of energetic exchange that the great thinker Niccolo Machiavelli understood with chilling clarity. He perceived that the world is not truly moved by eloquent speeches or righteous intentions. It is moved by perception, by the undeniable weight of presence, by the psychological and spiritual space you command. He knew that your true authority is not found in what you say, but in what you choose to withhold. He understood that true influence is not about being the loudest voice in the room, but the most centered presence. This is the essence of your awakening. You are being called to move from a state of pleading to a state of being, from a frequency of explanation to a frequency of existence. You must understand this. Your words are a currency, and for too long you have been spending them too freely, devaluing your own worth in the process. Let's be brutally honest with ourselves, for this is a path of radical self-awareness. Most people talk far too much. They are caught in a relentless cycle, a desperate loop of explaining themselves, justifying their choices, and defending their very existence. Why? Because they are seeking something outside of themselves. They are seeking permission, approval, validation. They are trying to convince the world of their worth, forgetting that their worth is an innate, divine birthright that needs no external cosign. They pour their precious life force energy into filling every silence, every pause, every moment of quiet, because the silence forces them to confront the one thing they may be running from themselves. They chatter to drown out the whispers of their own soul, but you must see the truth. This constant noise, this flood of words, is so easily ignored. It becomes static, background hum in the grand symphony of life. It is forgettable, but silence, a deliberate, centered silence that is unforgettable. That is the note that hangs in the air, long after the chaotic orchestra has ceased its playing. When you finally stop talking, when you consciously withdraw your energy from the cycle of over-explanation, a miraculous shift occurs. People start paying attention, not because your words were meaningless before, but precisely because your silence now holds an immense and undeniable value. Your silence becomes a rare commodity in a world drowning in noise. It signals a shift in the energetic economy of your relationships. Suddenly your presence has weight, your perspective has gravity. Herein lies the reality of the power dynamic that Machiavelli saw in every palace, every negotiation, and every human interaction. It is a spiritual law as much as a political one. The more available you are, the more you rush to explain, the less you are truly respected. The more you reveal your every thought and feeling, the more authority you surrender. The more you react to their provocations, the easier you are to control, to manipulate. You become a predictable pattern, an open book that anyone can read and then set aside. But the moment you go quiet, the very moment you reclaim your energy and hold your center, everything shifts, everything changes, because your silence disrupts their world. It interrupts the expected flow of energy they have grown accustomed to. People are conditioned for noise. They are used to constant access, to instant replies, to the endless feedback loop of emotional reactions and constant validation. They expect you to engage, to defend, to justify. It's a game they know how to play. But when you remove your piece from their board, when you simply refuse to play by those old draining rules, they don't know what to do. At first they don't get angry, they get confused. They wonder what happened. They replay conversations in their heads, searching for a mistake they might have made. They ask what they did to cause this shift, and then a subtle panic begins to set in. They are desperate to fill the gap, the void that your silence has created. They feel the loss of their access to you, and that right there in their moment of uncertainty is where your true respect is born. It is not born when you demand it with loud words. It is born when they finally deeply realize that they need your input, your perspective, your energy, far more than you need their approval. This is the sacred alchemy of silence. Machiavelli knew this. He didn't just advise leaders to be feared in a brutal sense. He advised them to be perceived as someone who is not easy to reach, someone who is not emotionally reactive, someone who is not constantly explaining, justifying and performing for the validation of others. He knew that the one who holds their peace holds the power. And this process begins with silence. Because in your silence, people are forced to project. They will fill the void with their own stories, their own fears, their own hopes. They will assume, they will wonder. They will create a narrative about you in their own minds, a narrative that is almost always far more powerful and intriguing than any reality you could have explained to them. And in that uncertainty, in that mystery you create, you gain control. Not a manipulative control, but a sovereign control over your own energetic field. Let's break this down to its sacred essence. When you are always talking, you are always revealing. You are showing your strategy. You are exposing your position. You are giving everyone around you a direct access pass to your internal state, your deepest feelings, your most vulnerable thoughts. And you must understand this divine truth. Once they know how you feel, how you think, and most importantly, how you will react, they own you. They hold the energetic keys to your kingdom. They'll know precisely what to say to trigger you. They'll know exactly how to get under your skin. They will know, with unerring accuracy, how to use your own openness, your own desire to be understood, against. But when you go quiet, all of that changes. When you retreat into the sanctuary of your own being, there is nothing for them to work with. There is no reaction to analyze, no confession to weaponize, no slip-up to exploit. There is just the profound, unshakable reality of your stillness, your presence. And presence, the kind that doesn't chase, doesn't beg, and doesn't need to be liked. That kind of presence demands respect. There is a psychological truth that governs the flow of human energy. People do not respect what they can easily predict. They do not respect what they can easily access. They do not respect what is always available, always explaining, always seeking. And unfortunately, in our modern world, most people live like open books, their pages fluttering in the wind for anyone to read. They are desperately trying to be understood, trying to be liked, trying to be accepted. But you must realize that the cost of this constant explanation is a slow, steady erosion. It is an erosion of your power, an erosion of your mystery, and ultimately an erosion of the very respect you seek. Machiavelli understood that a true leader, or any person seeking to hold their own divine influence, should never reveal their full intentions. They should never react emotionally in the public square of life. They should always keep a sacred portion of themselves unreadable, untouchable, held back in the holy of holies within their own soul, because power is not found in the loud and the it is found in the unreadable, in the unpredictable, in the quiet depth that makes people lean in, that makes them wonder, that makes them listen with an attention they never gave you before. Let's look at this in the context of your own relationship. When you are constantly available, always texting back within seconds, always explaining your every emotion, always saying, "Let me explain," what happens? They stop truly listening. They stop valuing your time, your energy, your very word. They begin to expect you to justify everything, because you have trained them, through your own actions, to see your voice and your attention as free, abundant, and without cost. But what happens when you go quiet? What happens when you let the silence? Suddenly, every single word you do choose to say feels immensely important. It carries weight, it has impact, because now your silence speaks far louder than your explanations ever could. In the world of business, it is exactly the same. The person who talks the most in a negotiation is almost always the one who loses. They lose because they reveal too much. They chase the deal too hard. They expose their needs, their desperation, their weakness. But the one who stays quiet, the one who listens and observes, they hold all the cards. Why? Because they have said nothing. And in saying nothing, they have said everything. Machiavelli once wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." But we must expand our understanding of this. Fear in this spiritual context doesn't always mean brute intimidation. Sometimes it simply means uncertainty. It means creating a healthy discomfort, a lack of full access. Because when people don't know exactly what you're thinking, they step more carefully. They choose their words with greater precision. They respect your time. They stop testing your boundaries. And real boundaries, the ones that are truly effective, don't always need to be spoken. They are an energetic reality that you emanate. Silence is one of the sharpest, most elegant boundaries you can ever draw. It doesn't beg. It doesn't yell. It doesn't explain. It just is, and it forces others to adjust to its unwavering line. Now let's take this even deeper into your own being. Why is it so profoundly difficult for so many to go quiet? Because silence creates space, and in that sacred space, we are forced to confront things we might be avoiding. We are forced to confront our own discomfort, our own insecurity, our own deeply ingrained addiction to being seen, heard, and validated. You'll notice this urge within yourself, the desperate urge to text back fast, to over-explain when you feel misunderstood, to jump in whenever there is tension, just to smooth it out. But what if you didn't? What if you just let the tension breathe? What if you allowed the silence to speak for you? Because that is when you will witness something truly powerful. People will begin to manage themselves around you. They will speak more carefully. They will wonder what you are thinking. They will adjust their tone. They will ask questions instead of making assumptions. And this shift will happen not because you raised your voice, but because you withdrew it. This is the art of controlled presence. It is about being intentional about where you show up, who you respond to, how much you say, and when you choose to say it. It is not about manipulation. It is about protection. It is about protecting your energy, your focus, your sacred mystery, and your divine influence. You do not need to post daily to be respected. You do not need to talk more to be understood. You do not need to be in every room to be remembered. You just need to master your silence, because respect doesn't come from visibility.
It comes from selective presence. It comes from the divine awareness that words often create noise, but silence, true silence, creates impact. Silence is not weakness. It is not absence. It is not retreat. It is strategy. And the most dangerous people in any room are not the loud ones. They are the ones who say almost nothing, yet control everything. This is the profound truth that Niccolo Machiavelli knew. Words can be manipulated, but silence cannot be misquoted. It cannot be distorted. It cannot be used against you, because it gives nothing away. And that very fact makes people deeply uncomfortable, because silence forces others to speak first, to reveal themselves, to fill in the blanks, to give up their own positioning. And while they are doing that, you are simply listening, watching, calculating, and in that sacred moment, you have the upper hand. Machiavelli taught that politics, power and relationships are not won through honesty or morality alone. They are won through perception, through understanding how people behave, through recognizing that what is seen is often far more powerful than what is true. And silence lets others project. That is what gives you leverage. When you say less, people guess more. When you don't explain, they assume. When you pause, they panic. And the more they try to figure you out, the more they reveal themselves. That is the hidden advantage. Silence puts them on the defensive, without you ever having to lift a finger. Because the truth is, most people are terrified of quiet. They need constant communication, constant affirmation, constant input. Why? Because silence exposes them. It exposes their neediness, their insecurity, their compulsion to control the moment. But when you remove your voice, your reaction, your presence, they lose their grip. Suddenly, they are unsure. They start wondering. They start adjusting. They start respecting you, not because you demanded it, but because you disrupted the very pattern of their reality. This is what Machiavelli meant when he spoke of power. It's not in force, not in fear, but in influence. And influence is not built in noise. It is built in contrast. When everyone is talking, the one who doesn't stands out. When everyone is reacting, the one who waits becomes feared. When everyone is chasing validation, the one who doesn't need it becomes respected. Let's look even deeper. In every dynamic business, relationships, friendships, there is a psychological economy at play. People are constantly trading value, trading access, trading energy. But if you give too much, too quickly, you devalue yourself. The person who is always replying immediately, they are not respected, they are expected. The one who is always available, they are not seen as generous, they are seen as easy. The one who explains everything, every single time, they are not seen as honest, they are seen as uncertain. And uncertainty kills respect. Machiavelli would tell you this: never let others see your full hand, never let them think they fully understand you, and never, ever let your silence become uncomfortable to you. Let it become uncomfortable to them. Because when you are truly in control, you don't just speak less, you speak last. And often, that is more than enough. Because respect is not built in what you say, it is built in when you say it. And more importantly, when you don't. This applies especially to argument. Most people argue to win, to dominate, to prove they are right. But in trying to win, they lose something far more valuable: mystery, composure, presence. Machiavelli would advise this instead. Let the other person speak first. Let them make their case. Let them reveal their fears, their anger, their intent. And while they speak, you stay still, you hold your frame, you listen, not to agree or disagree, but to observe. And when they finally finish, you answer in 10 words what they said in 100. That is power. That is influence. That is respect. Because you didn't need to fight. You didn't need to convince. You didn't need to explain. You spoke from a place of control, not emotion. And that difference, that is everything. Let's go even further. Silence doesn't just reveal others. It restores. You see, when you speak constantly, you spend energy, you react, you leak information, you give too much, and eventually you lose your center. But when you pull back, you return to it. You start to notice things. You hear the tone they used when they said, "Just kidding." You feel the energy shift. When someone new enters the room, you recognize what is real and what is performance, because you are no longer rushing to be heard. You are observing from a place of sovereignty, and sovereignty is what builds gravitas, the undeniable weight behind your presence. You know this person. When they walk into a room, they don't speak much, they don't over-explain, but when they do say something, everyone leans in. Why? Because they have trained the world to listen. And how did they do that? Not by talking more, but by talking less, strategically, calmly, deliberately. And if you want to become that person, you must learn what Machiavelli taught centuries ago. Silence is the beginning of respect and the end of manipulation. People cannot twist your silence, they cannot weaponize it, they cannot pull it out of context, because you gave them nothing. And nothing is powerful, nothing is scary, nothing is unforgettable. Think of how many arguments, how many betrayals, how many disrespectful moments in your life could have ended differently with just one thing: your silence. Not silence out of weakness, not out of avoidance, but out of strategy. A silence that says, I do not need to lower myself to respond to this. I do not need to explain myself to people who are committed to misunderstanding me. I do not need to be loud to be clear. That is respect. That is restraint. That is what Machiavelli admired. And here is the deeper truth. You cannot be truly powerful until you are okay with being misunderstood. That is what silence requires: the willingness to not be liked, the patience to let others think whatever they want, the confidence to say, I know who I am, I don't need to argue with noise. That is what separates the puppet from the master. The puppet reacts, the master waits. The puppet talks too much, the master uses silence like a sword. The puppet pleads, the master holds the frame, even when everyone else cracks. So now, ask yourself, are you filling silence out of strength, or out of fear? Are you talking to connect, or to be approved of? Are you explaining because it's wise, or because you are afraid of what they will think if you? Because every time you explain yourself when it is not necessary, you weaken your presence. Every time you reply when it is not your turn, you train people to expect more access than they have earned. Every time you rush to be understood, you forget that mystery is more powerful than clarity. Machiavelli would say, do not let people know your full intentions until it is too late for them to stop you. And what better way to guard your intentions than with silence? Respect is not something you demand, it is something you engineer. Not with aggression, not with pleading, not with volume, but with discipline, with intentional withdrawal, with quiet control. Because as Machiavelli knew, power doesn't come from how loud you are. It comes from how many people adjust themselves when you say nothing. It is not about dominance, it is about leverage, about psychological gravity, and that gravity builds in one place: silence. Let's make something crystal clear. Silence is not passivity, it is preparation. It is giving people the chance to show you who they really are, without your influence distorting the result. Most people are so loud, so desperate to be heard, so allergic to being misunderstood, that they reveal themselves before the room has even formed an opinion. They hand over every card, they try to explain everything, they ask for permission to be themselves. But what does that create? Predictability, and ultimately, disrespect. Because here is a cold hard truth. People do not respect what is easy to reach. They do not respect what is always visible. They do not respect what never withholds. Respect starts the second you do what most people are too afraid to do. Stop talking, stop proving, stop showing up out of obligation. And when you stop, they start wondering. They start questioning their tone. They start replaying their last message. They start sensing that they no longer have access. And that realization creates value, not because you punished them, but because you removed yourself without needing to explain why. Let's go deeper still. Most people are taught the wrong things about communication. They are taught to keep the peace, to talk it out, to never leave anything unsaid. But Machiavelli understood something truer. Control doesn't come from saying more. It comes from saying less at the right time. In fact, your greatest influence comes not from what you say, but from what you choose not to respond to. You don't need to address every insult. You don't need to clarify every misunderstanding. You don't need to follow up with people who never valued your effort in the first place. You need to do one thing: protect your presence. And silence is protection, because what happens when you go quiet? People project, they imagine, they fill in the gaps. They assume you are doing better without them. They assume you are rising. They assume your silence is power, not absence. And whether it is or it isn't, you have already won, because they are adjusting to you now. That is the Machiavellian method. You don't force respect, you don't ask for it, you create the conditions in which people have no choice but to give it, and silence is the first, most powerful condition. Let's look at modern life. In a world of constant noise, constant access, constant stimulation, silence is a luxury, it is scarcity, and scarcity breeds value. If you speak all day online, your words are diluted. If you post constantly, your presence is forgettable. If you respond instantly, your attention becomes expected, not appreciated. But the one who speaks once, and it echoes, that is the one they remember. This is not about mystery for mystery's sake. It is about control, controlling what you give, controlling how you move, controlling when you disappear, and when you reappear. Because people remember the person who left at their highest point. They remember the one who didn't explain themselves. They remember the one they couldn't figure out, no matter how hard they tried. They forget the overshare. They forget the people pleaser. They forget the one who was always around, always giving, always justifying their existence. Don't be that one. Be the one who walks away mid-conversation, not out of disrespect, but because your time expired. Be the one who says little in meetings, but whose words move the whole direction of the room. Be the one who leaves texts unread, not as a game, but because silence is the response. Here is a truth most will not admit. You teach people how to treat you. You teach them by what you tolerate. And in silence, you reteach them. You reteach them how to treat you by going silent. That is the reset. Not a speech, not an argument, not an emotional breakdown. Absent. When you disappear from places that drained you, when you stop answering calls from people who never poured into you, when you retreat from conversations that only lead to disrespect, that is when they finally feel your value, because now it's Machiavelli believed that those in power should never become too familiar. He wrote that familiarity breeds contempt, and it still does. Let them wonder where you went, let them question if they pushed too far, let them reflect, and while they do, you grow in stillness, in self-control, in clarity, because here is the secret. While others are scrambling to be heard, you are building the kind of presence that doesn't need an introduction. You walk into a room, and the energy shifts, not because of what you say, but because of what you do. You have become the person whose time matters, whose voice has weight, whose attention is earned, not assumed. And all of that, all of it, started the second you went quiet. Let this settle. The loudest person is not the most respected. The most liked person is not the most remembered. The most available person is not the most valued, but the most silent person. The one who speaks with intent. The one who disappears without warning, but returns with purpose. That person becomes unforgettable. So now, will you keep filling silence to feel useful, or will you use silence to feel powerful? Will you keep explaining your worth, or will you withdraw and let them experience your absence? Because there is a profound difference between being respected and being you, and that difference starts the second you go quiet.